The story of Scar and Mufasa's mom has been shrouded in mystery, with only a few Lion King stories even mentioning her. Not to mention, most of those stories are technically not considered canon. That said, the little information that we do know about the great queen that mothered Mufasa and Scar paints a picture of a fierce lioness who would do anything to protect the pride and her family, even if that meant leaving it. Here's the truly unfortunate reason Mufasa's and Scar's mom was practically forced to leave the Pridelands. Now, when it comes to the history of the Pridelands' biggest royal family, not much is directly known about how Mufasa and Scar's parents actually met each other, but fans can be sure that they loved each other enough to start a family together. It should also be pointed out that even though the entire Lion King fandom accepts the characters Ahadi and Uru as the parents of Scar and Mufasa, it is technically not canon information either. While Ahadi and Uru have appeared or been mentioned in Lion King spin-off series such as The Lion King 6 New Adventures or in the web series Legends of the Lion Guard, Protectors of the Pridelands, those stories are not considered to be factual in the Lion King universe, or at the very least, they've not been confirmed by the creators of The Lion King. With that said, for the sake of this video, like most Lion King fans, I'm going to consider Scar and Mufasa to be the children of Uru and Ahadi. Not much is known about how Ahadi and Uru would have met, but after listening to some fan theories and stories and also really thinking about it, there's a chance that they grew fond of each other while they were younger before officially becoming betrothed to one another, much like Kiara and Kovu. According to one fan fiction, Uru was actually the daughter of a lion who was adopted into the pride named Choyo, and a lioness who was an outlander named Amani. Amani is said to have had dark-colored fur and green eyes, which would explain why Scar looked so similar to the Outlanders. It may have been in his genes all along. So, according to the story, Choyo and Amani started a family together and had a cub that they named Uru. Meanwhile, Ahadi would have been born into the royal family and was officially made the heir of Mohatu, the former king of Pride Rock. As the heir, Ahadi would have spent a lot of time training under his father and learning how to be a proper king. Meanwhile, in the story, Uru is believed to be a bit of a loner. It's believed she didn't want to spend much time with others and much preferred exploring and adventures on her own. That is, until she and Ahadi eventually met. The two would have become a fierce and adventurous pair, much like Simba and Nala were, or, as I said before, Kiara and Kovu. Then, as you know from The Lion King, Mufasa and Scar would have obviously been born, and so the plot of the original Lion King begins. But what if I told you that Scar's birth was a bit different from his elder brothers, and it may have all been because of a special mission that Uru was forced to undertake? You see, in multiple versions of Lion King spin-off stories from The Lion King 6 New Adventures to The Lion Guard, they mention droughts that have plagued the Pridelands in the past, but none were as detrimental as the drought that Uru and Ahadi may have faced. According to a few brief mentions throughout all 6 adventures in The Lion King 6 New Adventures, it was pointed out that Uru wasn't present for any of the stories. Well, according to the books, this was because the Pridelands had been suffering through a life-threatening drought. In order to save the animals of the Pridelands, Ahadi and Uru decided that it would be best for one of them to search for a new water source. While Ahadi had to stay back with the rest of the Pride in order to run the kingdom, Uru realized that she would be free to search high and low for fresh water. Throughout the stories, Rafiki explained that Uru was successful in saving the Pride when she discovered a new lake somewhere in the western edge of the Pridelands. This lake supposedly provided enough fresh water for the animals to drink that it saved the Pridelands and prevented what would have meant certain death. Now, with so little information out there about Uru, it's really cool to think of her as the great queen who saved the Pridelands. I mean, according to the story, she risked her own life by separating herself from the Pride in search of something that could save everyone. You don't get much cooler than that. But what if Uru was carrying a much bigger secret while she was out on her special mission? Thanks to a really popular Uru fanfiction, fans have come to ponder the idea that Scar's birth wasn't as normal as some of the other lions in the Pridelands. As it turns out, him being physically smaller and weaker than Mufasa may have been for the sake of the Pride. Now, this isn't me saying that Uru would have intended to give birth to an unhealthy cub, but because of a series of unfortunate circumstances, there may have been no other option. You see, according to fanfiction, after giving birth to Mufasa, this is when the Pridelands experienced a massive drought. It would have been one similar to the drought mentioned in The Lion King 6 New Adventures. Only instead of Uru allegedly looking for a new water source for the Pridelands, this story suggests that she volunteered to go searching for answers. In this case, the drought was being caused by a lack of water in the gorge. So, Uru, being the great queen that she was, offered to go upstream to see if there was a way to fix the problem. The only thing is, when she volunteered, she made sure to keep a massive secret all to herself. As I mentioned before, at this point in the fanfiction, Mufasa had already been born. Scar, on the other hand, wasn't even a thought in Ahadi's mind. But this is because Uru had yet to tell Ahadi that she was pregnant again. That's right, according to this story, while experiencing experiencing a drought, a pregnant Uru took it upon herself to save the pride. Now, this tracks with the idea that Uru had an adventurous nature when she was younger, and it sort of makes her the only lion equipped to take on the task. A hottie would have had to stay back to watch after the Pridelands, and any of their ancestors would have been too old and weak. Plus, if this theory is accurate and Uru was pregnant during all of this, then it's likely a hottie wouldn't have known about it yet, and therefore would have had no concerns in sending his wife and queen to save their people. According to the story, Uru began her journey by following the main river, but would have needed to take time to hunt and sustain herself as well. Now, when you consider that there was a life-threatening drought going on at that time, at least according to the fan fiction, then food for Uru would have been scarce as well. That said, she managed to do what she had to do so that she could survive and discover the source of the current drought. The story continues by explaining that it took weeks for Uru to reach the source of the problem and realize just what she had to do to save her pride. As Uru made her way up the dried-up riverbed, she noticed a massive natural dam made out of large tree trunks and debris that must have been washed into the river during a rough storm. The debris spanned from one side of the river to the other and created a natural blockage that was keeping the water from freely flowing down the Pridelands. According to the story, the still pregnant lioness reached out to any animals that she could find to help her clear the debris, and with their help, they allowed the river to flow again. Once the water was flowing again, the story claims that Uru thanked everyone who helped and then quickly returned to her pride with not one, but two pieces of news. The question is, were both of them considered good news? Honestly, it's hard to tell, but if this fan fiction is accurate, it certainly adds a darker tone around Scar's birth that I didn't expect. Nonetheless, it makes a lot of sense. According to the story, when Uru returned to Ahadi, the king rejoiced to see his queen once again and promised never to be apart from her like that ever again. It was at this point that Uru revealed her big secret to Ahadi and let him know that he was going to be a father for a second time. Ahadi was likely surprised to learn that Uru was pregnant and possibly even upset because he wouldn't have sent her on such a dangerous mission had he known previously. But that's not the worst part after the birth of their second son. As I mentioned before, the story claimed that the Pridelands and the surrounding area were suffering from a massive drought. This means that on her mission, food and water would have been very scarce for Uru, which means they were also scarce for the cub that was growing inside her. This could have potentially led to some sort of malnutrition during the pregnancy, which could have been the very reason that Scar, or Taka as he was known at that point, was born much smaller and weaker than Mufasa was when he was born. While it wasn't Uru's intention, this would have led to the struggles that Scar seemed to face in The Lion King and years prior. For instance, simply because Mufasa was born in a healthier state, there was no chance of Scar becoming the dominant lion. Now, this was probably a good thing because as you saw toward the middle and end of The Lion King, Scar really wasn't fit to be king. That's a debate for a different day though. According to this fan fiction and what we know about Scar and Mufasa's mother, she was a hero and one of the greatest queens the Pridelands had ever known. It's to the point where she may have been willing to risk her own life and the life of her unborn cub as long as she was able to save her family and the rest of the pride. What do you think about this story though? Would a queen like Uru really have risked her pregnancy in search of water for the Pridelands? Be sure to let me know in the comments below.